Great.
Wow. I feel like I've already been at the seminar. I think we can all go home now. Your story was, anytime I hear a story, I've read as well, I'm very impressed. And then to hear your story, and your stories all confirm a couple of things. And you would have felt this when you go to a seminar, you're like, oh, I wish this person was here, or I wish these people came, or I see you all nodding. And the reason you do that is because you're here for way more than one reason. When you were all speaking, I was noting reasons why you're here. You're here today because you want to learn, and that's quite obvious. So you came with your pen and paper and you want to learn, right? So, and people would think that's the only reason you're here. And some of you may even think that's why you're here. That's the only reason. It's not, from your story. You're here because you want to effectuate change in your sphere of influence, right? From, I will memorize your name in a bit, but from the first speaker, talking about, I have 2 kids and they're teenagers, and, times are changing, and, and it's not even what he was saying, it was the passion. To the next speaker who said, racism, but, I was just blind to my own privileges, right? So you're here, yes, you want to learn. That's one reason you're here, but you're here because you want to make a change. That's why you're here. You're here because you realize that there are people that are unfortunate, that are underprivileged, disadvantaged. You're nothing. That's why you're here. You see, you're here for more than one reason. Your company sent you here to learn. But you're here for up to 10 reasons, as I noted on my paper. You're here because you want to see the underprivileged have some level of privilege, some dignity. Somebody said, the indigenous people in my area treated horribly, and that bothers you. And you're here because you're tired of racism. You're tired of injustice. You're tired of, you're not here because, okay, I have it all good. So, as some would say, well, I don't really see a problem. I mean, yeah, there was racism way back. And my response to that is often the quotation from Edmund Burke, who said, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing, right? And you are good people, that's why you're here. Sometimes we become overly humble and don't realize who we are. You're here because you are a Martin Luther King. You are a Mother Teresa. You are here because you are a Mahatma Gandhi. And I want you, if that's all you get today, just know that you are doing something right. In fact, you're doing many things right. And that's who you are. So even if you were not here today, the point number one, you're here to learn may not apply, but every other point will apply. So whether you came or not, you're here for way more than you thought you were here. Another one I wrote down, you're here because many people are complacent. Many people around you, they are blind. Many people around you seem to not care. So somebody's got to care, and that's you. That's why you're here today. You're here today because you care, right? You're here today because many have decided to sit down and do nothing about what's going on, or even choose to not even see or hear what's going on. You are here today because you want to be the change you desire. Mahatma Gandhi said that best. He says, be the change you desire. You're here today because you want to do that. You're here today because you are a leader. That's the definition of leadership. I wrote a book on this, and my definition of leadership is a spirit that can only be ignited by purpose. It's like the gas you turn and the fire comes on. And until you have a purpose, you can be a manager, but not necessarily a leader. You cannot be voted into leadership. You cannot be promoted into leadership. Prince Charles did not become a leader because he became a king. He became a manager of the United Kingdom, but not a leader. It's what he does that will tell us. History is the only thing that would judge your leadership. Your leadership is measured when you are long gone, not when you're sitting on the position, but when you are long gone. So you are here today because you are a true leader. You're here today because you are Mahatma Gandhi. We often refer to these people, the Mahatma Gandhis, the Mother Teresas, and the Abraham Lincolns. And, and my prayer and my hope and my belief is that years from now, we'll be referring to the you and to the you and to the you and to the you. And somebody in your school or your college or your organization is going to say, yes, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, there was this woman. 10 years ago, there was this man. There was this person who started this, right? So I segue into my own story to say, I never knew what was racism until I came to the West. In fact, I didn't even think there was a difference between me and the white look, right? So I was sent as a teenager to school in the United Kingdom. And, I remember, after I came before school started, maybe 2 months before school started, and to look around. And I was trying to get a place near the school. And I was just call, hello. Then there's no Google or there's newspaper. So I say, hey, this apartment, is this still available? He says, no. I'm like, then I complained to one of my friends. I said, how come all the apartments on the newspaper say they are available, but when I call, they say it's taken? They say, it's your accent. I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you mean? You understanding me right now? He said, no, the moment they know you're African or you are not an English person, I said, really? He said, yes. He said, okay, let's try it out. So one of my friends, his name is Clem. He's still my friend, Clement. Love you, Clem. And, so he was born there, and but he's Nigerian, so he has the accent and everything. So he come and say, just wondering the apartment is available. They say, oh, yeah. This is the number I just called. They told me it's taken. He says, see, I told you. And then, so we started to get white people to get apartment for us. And of course, when they find out that Black people moved in, they tell us, oh, I'm so sorry. My husband's in-law is coming from Newcastle and we need a place back. And then the moment you give the place back, they rent it out to to a white person. So I always found that fascinating. I was wondering, you have an apartment to rent. You want money, of course, or else you won't rent it. I have money to pay. You don't even know who I am. I don't smoke, I don't drink, never have. Then what's the problem? So that's how we went through school. It was crazy. So my friend George, he left UK, he came to Canada. He's passed away now, may he so rest in peace. And he kept telling me, come to Canada. Canada is better. Canada is better. Now, yeah, I see some eyes rolling. Now, what he didn't know at that time was he fell into a neighborhood where everybody was immigrants. So of course, immigrants will rent home to immigrants. He didn't know then that Canada wasn't really better. So I remember coming from the airport, the bus was driving through, I don't know if you know Toronto, where a place called Royal York. I still think of it. I'm thinking of it now. I'm going to go back and buy a house in Royal York, and I'll rent it to immigrants. But, so we're passing, and I love the place. I didn't know what it was. I just like, oh, wow, nice place. I love this place, right? And then lo and behold, the bus kept going into a neighborhood. It's like, now I'm in Africa, or I'm in China, or I'm in India. I'm like, everything changed, the demography, suddenly you start seeing lots of police cars. I'm like, when I met you at George, I said, man, well, yeah, I don't live in that area. That area is like Royal, they won't rent a place to you. I'm like, well, you say Canada is better. I say it's better because, they are more, the differences, and England have it too, but there's a fundamental difference. The difference is here, they let you be you in your community. They just don't want you in their community, which is sad, but that's true, right? So then I got a job as a customer service rep. I used to work for Bank of Montreal. I still consider my best job ever. I'm always passionate. My wife would say the only time I'm not is when I'm sleeping. Even that is in doubt because this is how I snore. I snore passionately, right? So, and she woke up, did you hear the storm last night? I said, I wasn't looking for the storm. I was sleeping. You can pour cold water on me when I'm done. I'm sleeping. I won't wake up. But I got this job and, they trained me for the job, loved it, still love customer service. Bank of Montreal speaking, Alex speaking, how may I help you today? What the effing accent you have? I'm like, what? What? Right, and they will insult you for 20 minutes. And your call is supposed to only be for 9 minutes, or else your rating goes down because you're supposed to rush them out of the car. Right, so I will go to my boss, then his name is Hasida Beg. When LinkedIn came out, I tried to find him to tell him what I'm about to tell you, because he told us the customer is always right. That's not true, right? I only realized that a few years ago. The customer is not, I've always knew it was wrong, because when I go to the washroom, the ladies' washroom was right opposite. You know, you see them quickly making out like, Paris, what's going on? Why are you crying? The customer said, I'm a terrorist. And they are actually crying in the washroom, makeup washed away because of a phone call, right? So I speak French, and so they added $1, so it was $13 an hour. So I started to get $14 an hour, and I felt big, and I started to take Montreal calls and Quebec calls. Oh my goodness. C'est quoi ce bordel là? Qu'est-ce que tu dans l'Afrique noire? Like, my goodness, I mean, what are you doing in the bank? You're African. You all charge me all this money, and then they put some African on the phone call? I said, sir, but what's the problem with your account? You are not going to touch my account. Anyway, there were times we actually will make, I took all this things serious. We may laugh at it now and I speak with humor, but it was not serious. Certainly to some people, I think others will say I have a thick skin. I don't think that's a compliment. We should not go around having thick skin, right? You know, if you just want to have a thick skin, wear bulletproof, go to Afghanistan where the war is. But that's what they say, Alex, you have a thick skin. But again, in hindsight, it was not right on any level. They had put us through so many abuse, so many. I didn't know what mental health was, but I can tell you that when people start crying in the washroom, that's mental health right there, right? When people call sick when they are not, that's mental health right there, right? So we didn't know all this, and Alex, customer is always right. So I devised a way to go above him, to Bill Swift, who's then now the senior director, and I went and above, and I went to 5-6 levels, and I went to speak to the HR VP. Nobody wanted me to get it close to her, so when I figured she was the HR VP, I was always walking around the hallway where she is, so I can catch her. So, and I did. Her name is Joni, nice woman. I say, John, and of course, they don't know who I am because I'm so low. And I said, you know, I work in the column. How are you? I said, please, do you have a minute? I said, yeah. I said, here's what's going on. He said, okay, I'll speak to, we call the manager's name. And I knew the manager would say the customer is already. I said, actually, I have already. I have. And this is what they said. He said, okay, let's make time to talk. And we made time to talk. And she asked me, so what do you suggest? I didn't even have an answer. I didn't have an answer. I said, I don't know. I don't know. He said, then why do you think about it? I said, okay. And I know you are the Jonies of your world, right? He said, okay. And so I thought about it. Like, remember, there was no internet, there's none of this. So I said, okay, potluck, right? A potluck. Let's start from there, right? And that was Canada's favorite way of saying we are diverse, potluck. Who remembers the days of potluck? Nobody? Because you ate some Indian food means you are not racist, right? That's what potluck's supposed to say. So anyway, that's where we started. So everybody's supposed to bring their food, and we all did. And then they asked me to speak. I'm like, what do I say? You said, this is your idea. And they are out there praising me and calling me to speak. Since then, I have spoken about 12,000 times from that particular moment. 400 cities, 40 nations worldwide. Messages to send. Since that time, that opportunity Joni gave to me, right? And I got on the stage and I said, well, thank you all for coming. And I shared the same story. This is what they do to us on the phone. And people I say, wow. Many of those I say, wow, did nothing. Because I saw them after. Few of them did. And some gave us the opportunity to start making changes. So I started a Black group in the bank. I won all the diversity award. I won so many awards. And then I left later. I had a boss who just didn't like me for one reason. So I left. People don't leave organizations, they leave bosses, right? So, and I left and I moved to CIBC. And I was shocked that an organization of 150 years did not have a Black VP, no Black executive. So I adopted the same strategy again of walking the hallway until I catch the senior vice president, right? There's so much bureaucracy, you can't, so my boss is not going to tell me, what are you doing going to speak to the senior VP? I said, I just saw him on the hallway. Like, is that not where I saw him? Is that not where I saw him? On the hallway. But I was waiting for him. But I won't say that. So I said, I heard there's a mentorship program in the bank. He said, yes. I said, I would love to participate. So speak to Sharon Whitfield. She's the senior vice president. I said, yes, I have, but there's a problem. So what? I said, I would love to be mentored by a Black executive. I want to be a Black executive. He said, okay. Now he didn't know that I knew. There was not. I had done my research. The most senior Black leader was a senior director of a call center. And let me tell you how the bank is. There's the director, senior director, associate director, something director, then associate VP, VP, this VP, that VP, then you move to EVP, then you move to SEVP. By then you're dead before you ever get to the top. Like if you don't die, that would be a miracle. Like, like literally, you can't get to the top, especially if you're Black. Right? That's really what it is. There's so much ranking that you just can't get to the top. So, cut the story short, I influenced them. It wasn't my job, but I did. And they finally got the first Black VP. That was in 2006, I think it was. And he's still my friend today. He left. He left because he said when it comes to meeting, at the right time, meeting was done. Right? They meet before him. Right? They invite you 10 o'clock, they meet at 9 o'clock. And then when you come, they want to tell you what to do. And that is an indication of no inclusion, right? We are diverse. See, you wanted a Black VP? We have one. Right? I have coached Olympians, I've coached high-level people, I've done work for major organizations, and my message is the same. People say, let me write policy. We wrote a policy for Canada basketball, we wrote a policy for United Way and all this other organization. But there's one aspect that people miss the most. We'll talk about policy and culture and data and stuff. We built what we call a systematic framework to eliminate systemic racism. And it works. It's a 12 points, and I will show you that later on today. But the most important aspect people miss is until you make the effort on yourself first, until you increase your self-awareness, until you care so much to meet the people, until you have friends, until I look into your top 10 most called numbers, top 20 if I decide to be gracious. And if those top 20 does not reflect the diversity you deserve in your workplace, you are not ready to have diversity in your workplace. Right? How many diverse people have you had at the barbecue on your dining table? Have you ever sat with your family and have somebody at the table who's from India, from China, from the indigenous that we say are treated horribly? Right? If you've never done that, you will hire them, they will leave, I guarantee you. Guarantee you. Because what makes people stay or leave is not necessarily the work. Is the people they work with. Is the people they work with. So the first step to any form of 50-30 challenge, the first step to any form of creating an organization that is cohesive, the very first step, even before you create that 3, 5, 6, 7 year strategy, is you. That's the very first step. Right? I always I have a group of 10 questions I came up with to test to create your own personal diversity index. How's that? Personal diversity index. Your personal diversity index, right? And one of the questions is, if I look in your top 10 cause, or the cause you call the most, and one person was trying to be cheeky in the audience, he said, what about if my top 10 are my family? Like, how does that apply? Really? I say that you subtract the family because do I have to spell it out? The top 10 besides your family, right? Top 10 besides your family. And if you want to stretch it, maybe add top 12, top 15, but top 10. In your workplace, at the end of the day, if you look at the people that you have spoken to, Are they reflective? And when I say spoken to, not, hey, Everett, can you make sure we send this report out? Or Alex, can we? No, the people you actually sat down and say, hey, so how are you? Right? The ones you talk to besides work, you know? Yeah, and what comes to mind was when COVID came, we had to be home, and you know, my kids were home, so they're here with me, but they were on the dining table doing their work. And my son, who's 7 now, was 4. Brilliant young person. He's in grade 1 and doing grade 5 maths, right? So he's very brilliant in that regard. And whenever they ask questions, you know, and the teacher will pick everybody but my son, right? So, and I am the one who set up the Zoom for him every morning. So I see the class, they all white, the teacher is white, everybody's white. Now, let me prefix it by saying, and I often say this all the time, what we are faced with is less of white people, so to speak, versus Black people. It's the whiteness culture. There's a difference. There are lots and lots of white people that are nice. You are here, like I said, you are here beyond the, like you are in a position of authority that you could decide to not be here. So you are not one of those, your boss say, you gotta go. So if you came of your own free will, then you have a certain high level position of authority. And that means you fall in a category of, you are in a space of whiteness, even though you're white. And I'm in a space of whiteness, even though I'm Black. That's just what it is, right? So, you know, I told my wife, but I said, you know, this is what I do. I see this all the time. There are 21 people in the class. I counted them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The teacher asked a question, say 5 questions an hour. They stay online for, I don't know, 5 hours. They take breaks in between. And I'm saying, if you are conscious and cautious, you should give the only Black person in that room a chance. The reason she's not does not mean she's racist. Or like, she's racist. No. That's judging her too harshly. There's a professor called Professor Tucker in 1926, you can Google this person later. He came up with what they call the Hans effect and the Halos effect. Who's ever heard that? Yes. And he talked about people identify. Like when I walked into this hall, the only Black person in the room, my eyes went towards her. She may not even notice that, but she noticed me. She may not even look at me, but she noticed somebody like me just came in, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But where something is wrong is if you keep your focus on that person. So if I just decide, if I package my message to be speaking in favor of Black people because there's a Black person in the room, that's where some would call it unconscious bias. I just drop the unconscious and just say bias, right? You are not unconsciously nice or unconsciously bad. It's just a thought process that you have, right? So when the policeman, as they say, or policewoman or police person is driving, and there's a white kid who pulls his pants down, you know, the way they do it these days, they watch too much rap music and they pull their pants down. And to the police, they just pass by. But if a Black person pulls it down, to the police, oh, it may have a gun, it may have a knife, it may have drug, it may have something. That doesn't necessarily make the police officer a racist. He certainly, now he or she or that person may be, but that action is not indicative of racism. It is, however, indicative of a very low awareness. Is it very indicative of somebody who you may even consider blind, and there's colorblind, that's another issue, but just completely oblivious. I often say oblivious to the obvious, right? I used to watch Law and Order a lot. I used to love it. I love all this investigation until I realized that every person raping or killing is a Black guy. And I actually ran statistics to say, you can do that yourself, statistics of crime, right? There are cultures that tend to gravitate towards specific crimes, right? All Muslims are not terrorists, but if they look at the data, it shows that most of the terrorists are Muslims. That's what it shows. But then they omit data from places like Ireland, Right? You have the Irish and Italy, Spain. Like I used to live in Europe, so I followed the news, and I was shocked to see that they are white terrorists. But some of you perhaps over here don't even know about it, right? The Spain has white terrorists. Ireland has white terrorists. Germany has white terrorists. No, it's not an opinion. They do. There are groups saying we should move away from Spain and become our own country. And they put bombs in cars. That's terrorism, right? So, but the data that is tracked would indicate that most of the terrorists are Muslims. So, coming back to my little boy's case, and, I spoke to my wife and I said, please, and between us, I seem to come with a lot of energy. Right. So, and I come with a lot of awareness, and I try to manage that depending on the environment I find myself. Right. But she has a certain level of poise to be able to connect without them feeling judgmental, even though I'm not. I think you all know what I'm saying. So she would approach first. I always come later if nothing, if no results are taken. Right. So, nothing happened in that case, unfortunately. No, I give everybody a chance. And you find people become defensive instead of being, oh, I never really noticed. So I took my phone, and while they're on Zoom, I recorded the action, literally on Zoom. In that same school, my other kid, who's 14 years old, wore a t-shirt to school the other day. It says, "Make Africa Great Again." I thought that was fancy because I'm tired of making America great. I think there's other places that we want to make great besides America, right? So I'm not even sure how he got the shirt. So he got it from my other son. It says, "Make Africa Great Again." You'll be amazed at what happened. Went into the lunchroom, a bunch of white kids. They're all 14 years old, 15 years old, pounced on him, laughing at him. Africa is a shithole, and this, and one punched him on the face. He fell to the ground. Luckily, he did not respond. I didn't expect him to. It's like a teddy bear. It's big, but is such a sweetheart. I punched him to the ground, right? We went to the school. They called me, went to the school. This time my wife was freaking out. I was the one that was calm, because two of us can't freak out. So, and the principal is like, "Rest assured, we're going to investigate. I said, okay, so we left. And then called us 3 days later to come to the school. Said they watched the video, and it was exactly how it happened. And I said, "Can we see?" He said, "No, we can't see the video." He says, "So what option do we have?" And he mentioned our option, but downplayed the police option to report it as a crime. I never even thought about it. That afternoon, I was in a Zoom call, and he just happened to be with the head of diversity for Western University. He's a friend of mine, Dr. Pio. And I mentioned to him, and he used to actually be a superintendent of the school board. The moment I told him that, he says, "Alex, stop the Zoom call the cops." I said, "Why?" He says, "Listen, I was aboard the school. When it's a white that punch black, they start with police. When it's black that punch white, they start with the police. Then they call parents later. When it's white that now punch black, they start with the parents and say, don't call the police." It says, "You are a statistics guy. You're the one doing presentation, calling on, quoting numbers. That incident will not be in part of the number." I said, "Really?" So I went, called, I had this text number, the principal. I sent him the text. I need to talk to him later. I said, "Oh, really? Okay, fine. We don't want to take an option from you. You actually don't have option." I said, "No, you, principal, should call the police," right? It was, "I'm not going to call. You call. It's your school. It happened. Just let me know when they'll be in your school to investigate, and I'll be there." And that was exactly what happened. And they now charge the young man with hate crime. So that is now a statistics that my son has been racialized to the extent of hate crime. I never researched what it was, but I now researched afterwards. And what it means is, I didn't just call you a monkey, which they call him. I didn't just hurl racial insults at you. I was also physical with you. I punched you. So if I just say N-word or then they won't consider it hate crime until they can prove that there was some form of malicious act, which in that case, there was a punch in his face. And that's how it became hate crime. And, I asked the principal, it'd be nice if we can meet with the parents. He said, "Wow, that's honorable of you to even want to meet with the parents." I said, "Sure, I'm not here trying to diss some other kid. I was looking forward to meet him and say, I'm really sorry, to even tell them I'm sorry for what happened. They said the parents says they don't want to meet with you. I see some of you are shocked. And that will tell you exactly where that's coming from. This racism we are fighting comes from a couple of things. Number one is upbringing. You are raised to be racist. That's just what it is. It's not my opinion, it's a fundamental fact. When I started to go into church here, I got adopted by a fine man called Richard Waddington. He lives in near Berry somewhere, a little town near Berry. And when George Floyd happened and everybody's kind of been more conscious, he called me and says, I have something to say, like, I think I'm racist. Man, come on, Dad, how can you say you're racist? Like, you adopted me, you're free with me. And they said, no, when I was a kid, I would go to school and they'll teach us songs like Mini, 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 More. It says, well, when I get home, my parents will change it to Mini, 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 More, catch a nigger by the toe. If he hollers, let him go. And it says they will change the rhymes into racial. If somebody is in the audience saying they remember that, I was shocked, right? Shocked. I'm like, really? Say yes. It says the indigenous in our neighborhood, they ganged up against them to get them out of the neighborhood. Go back to the reserve. Don't rent a place in this town. They own the country, right? So I remember speaking in an event in Mississauga years ago, way before George Floyd. I'm talking 2008. And I wrote this in my book, one of my other books, Welcome to Greatness. And I wrote this story. Of course, I protected and told me the story. And I shared my story, and there was this fine lady in the audience, like almost crying. And when after everybody came to me, oh, thank you, and they left, I signed autograph, she stayed and she walked up to me and she says, thank you. And the thank you was literally from the deepest part of her heart. She says, when I was a kid, I'm telling you exactly what she told me. So when I was a kid, our neighbor that moved in were Black family. So I was a kid, 4 years old, 5 years old. So I play with the kids because we go to the same school. My parents would get angry. Why are you playing with them? Then when I went to their house, oh my goodness, my parents called my uncle, my grandfather, my grandmother, everybody came to the house to warn me never, ever to go there again. If they give me food, don't eat. If they do this, don't. It says, I never knew why. All I knew is they put fear of Black people in my mind. And it says, lo and behold, until your message today, I never really examined myself. But when I look back, when I now went to high school, I had no Black friends. When I went to university, when a Black person comes into a room where maybe she says she's visiting somebody and they come in, she walks out, she avoided them at all costs. When she sees them in the hallway, she never knew, and she never even knew she was doing it until that day, and she, of course, was crying and gave her my card. She gave me a card that says, I can meet with you, no obligation. I'm not looking for business or anything. Just if you want to have a further chat, certainly we can. Hugged her and make sure I protected her tears from the crowd. And then she left. And when I got home, I often put the cards on the table and I see who gave me cards. She was the senior director for HR in that company. What's the implication of that? Hiring process, promotions. So yeah, she told me about running away from Black people growing up, but what she may not have even realized that when there are resumes, there are interviews, the Black doesn't get it. When there's promotion, the Black doesn't get it. When there's this thing, the Black doesn't get it. Why? Because of what the parents did, right? So I remember a senior HR VP in another company I was coaching who told me she grew up in a little town in BC. It says, I remember when the first time we saw hijab, she even said, that thing, and I knew what it was and I didn't want to help her out, right? So that, the thing the Muslim women put, that. It's embarrassing though. You're senior VP for HR. If anybody should know what's called, you should. And I'm like, I'm very good. Maybe I should be an actor. I'm just thinking, I should move to Hollywood. Right? So I'm like, like when you see Muslim woman and weak, you say, no, not weak. Eventually, I helped her. I said, "You mean hijab?" Yes. I remember when somebody with a hijab moved in, I was 9 years old, and this woman talking to me is at least 60. 9 to 60, that's 51 years. I know I failed maths, but that one I was good at, right? So on to this point, we are sitting down coaching. You never realized you were racist all along. I never said that, of course, but that was the essence of the conversation, right? She said the parents were having meetings in the night with our neighbors. How do we get this family out? They must be terrorists. People can be that ignorant. A Muslim family was run down in London, Ontario, right? Anybody read the news? So we are in what Martin Luther King would once refer to as the fierce urgency of now. My goodness, the fierce, I'm shivering even thinking of this. The fierce urgency of now. We are no longer at the era of doing this for us. We must change the word for the next generation. Many of you reference your children here today. You didn't come and say, I'm going to talk about my children. I didn't do that, but we do. Why? Because we have kids. We care. Even if we don't have kids, we care for the next generation. We love the word so much that we must speak up. We are no longer in the era of not being racist, but we must become anti-racist. Having a black friend as what's his name? Rob Ford, the fine mayor of Toronto, controversial one that passed away. Once I say people say I'm racist. I coach a soccer team and most are black. That does not mean you are not racist. It doesn't mean you are not racist because you have a black neighbor, you live in a black neighborhood, you employ a black person. In fact, the worst thing you can do is to employ a black person, employ an indigenous person, or a Muslim, or a pagan, or somebody that is different from you. Someone who don't think like you, talk like you, look like you, love like you, pray like you. You hire that person and you feel good, and yet you have not done enough to create a culture, a work environment that will make them feel included. Worse, that is. It's better you don't hire them than hire them and lose them, because that is an indication. Statistics. I have it, you can Google it too. After George Floyd, many organizations started to hire black executives, right? Black director of EDI, and they posted it on LinkedIn. One day I saw one on LinkedIn, I was just like, okay, I gotta say something on this one because this is just wrong. And I wrote an article on LinkedIn and I said, the fact that you've hired your first black executive after being in business for 120 years is nothing to celebrate. It should be a moment of sober reflection, for it has indicated that for far too long, organizations have had a culture that is so toxic that immigrants and people of diverse backgrounds never wanted to be part of it. And now that this has become a publicity stunt for your organization, I'm deeply concerned that this is just a checkbox. I wrote that article 2021. 2023, 80% of them have quit. Did you know that? 80% in the US and Canada of chief HR officer, EDI officer, they've all quit. I have a WhatsApp group on my WhatsApp. 67 of them are there. Some high ranking, most high ranking. One told me, Alex, I've been VP of HR in my company, VP of EDI in my company for 2 years, no budget, no staff. See, you're one of them. No budget, no staff. How do they want you to operate? One came crying to me. Literally crying. When I say crying, like literally in tears. I paused and I went on to cry. And I asked her, I said, you have to make a decision. You have family. Tell me about your family life. If you don't mind, I said, I'm married, I have kids. And this, I said, this is not for everybody. This job is not for everybody. It is for those who are sold out to the cause. Sold out means whether you are paid enough or not, you are willing to do it. In fact, you can never be paid enough for this. They will pay you for sales manager or sales executive. Bring the sales, you get paid. They will even pay for operation. Reduce the cost of operation, you get a bonus. Not for EDI. EDI's budget has been cut since the death of George Floyd. I believe George Floyd is going to rise up soon and say, what's going on? Right? So this is the era we are. Now, if you have the passion that you have the determination that you all have, you have the willingness and the commitment to do it, how do we begin? How do we sustain? How do we measure? And those are some of the things we are going to talk about today. So that was my opening speech. That's my opening speech. I have so much to share because I have spent thousands of hours researching this topic. Like I said, my first speech was back in this company, in the bank. And since then, I can't even keep up. I have over 300 speakers in my roster. As I'm speaking now, I'm supposed to be speaking 3-4 other places. So I've appointed other speakers to do that. So we outsource it to other speakers, about 300 of them. And when I see fine people, I know them. I've also been in front of unfine people. I didn't say ugly people. I didn't say bad people. I say unfine people. UN, that's fine. Right? And what does that mean? It's unfine people are, you can tell they are looking at me and they're like, dude, I'm here because I was told to be here. I'm not necessarily interested in what you're saying. And frankly, I don't give a damn about EDI. It's right on their face. Some have told me directly. One CEO told me, if I mention the company, you know the company. Because I kept saying, we need to meet the CEO. Like, we have a 9-month contract and we're not going to meet the CEO. Like, we need to meet the CEO. When we met the CEO, it's like, and it is working on Zooms. And it's not looking. Right? I have a way of navigating terrains like that. So I make a little joke here. And then finally got his attention. And in the next meeting, says, to be very honest to you, the board insists we must do this. I said, so, but what do you think? He said, I think it's the right thing to do. But the real answer was already given, right? The board insists. We get $300 million every year from the government. So the government have told the board, we must do this. So they say you are good, so let's try it. That was what I got. When we prepared a 300-page report for them, and we summarized it into a board presentation, the CFO of the company called my director of operations, who's a white woman, and left a voicemail. It wasn't even a conversation, left a voicemail and said, was there any way, Alex, we can have the presentation to the board when Alex is unavailable? They wanted to slide me out. They wanted her to do it as a white woman. Do you know how many times I sit on a Zoom call with her? I pay her salary, and they'll be talking to her as if she's my boss. And she will point them to me and say, okay, I will see with Alex, and then we'll see how we are going to make this work. And they won't still look at me on Zoom. And they'll still look at her and say, okay, we'll be waiting for you to get back to us. And once every now and then, she'll ask me, but why didn't you say anything? I say, what will it matter? I do say things sometimes. Most of the time I don't. Right? They think you are the boss. It's just what they think. I'm not going to turn a meeting into a workshop. Right? But that is an indicator. But all the time I come on the call, and there's this fine white woman or fine white man or fine white person who will say, listen, I've listened to you on YouTube, and they are looking straight at me on Zoom. And there's 2 white people who work for me in the call, and they are focused. That is what I talk about being inclusive. That's what I consider being conscious and being cautious. That's what I consider somebody who have a high level of awareness, right? I'm in a call with 2 of my staff, they are white. You're on a call with 2 of your staff or 1, and both of you are white, and you're focused. And I have an assistant who sometimes is on the call, right? And I always make sure, I say, what do you have to say to that? Well, I'm not sure. I said, no, I think go ahead, share your story. Like, why am I sharing this? You want to give people in the room who don't look like you the opportunity to be included in the conversation. It must be an intentional effort. If you don't, doesn't mean you're racist, let's be clear. But it doesn't mean it means you're not conscious and cautious enough to do that. And you're not going to get the results that you desire. So what I'm going to ask us to do before I start taking questions and comments, and I will have questions for you, and then I will of course put up a slide and walk you through. I have what I feel I want to share, but what I feel I want to share, especially with regards to PowerPoint and content, is not as important as what you want to learn. So everybody's going to have the opportunity to share their thoughts, pick something from the message that reinforced it for you. You know, when you said this, or when you said that, I thought of this, or I disagree, like we are free to disagree, or I would love more information, or I have a question, or I have a comment, and then use the opportunity to also say what you want to learn. We're a small group. Rest assured that if we don't have the answers here today, we know where to find them. I certainly know where to find them. Like I'm very, very super resourceful. We get information, and I know how to. Who got my email last night? Any of you got my email last night? Just shook with your hand if you did. Yes. Okay. Yes. So that's me being passionate. I gotta reach out to them. Yeah. I always ask them, right, do you have their email? Like, who are they? Like, I need to know, and I want to go on their website and see what they have on their website. So I'm telling you the truth. I've snooped around, not as much as I would have loved to, but I wanted to see a website. They have an EDI statement. You know, Google your company name and put on images and see the faces of people that shows, right? You know, sometimes you find organizations, they borrow black faces from the internet and put it on their website, right? You can tell. People don't know you can tell with AI right now. AI, is this true? AI is like, no, I know that company. AI, wicked guy, man. AI can tell you everything. So, yeah, but we all have that. If you don't mind the two tables, I would love you to either partake on one of these tables so that you are at par. Is that okay? Can I just come forward? Either you join Everett here or even join this table or fine. Yes. Yes, there's space. Everett has a table here. There's one here. Sorry? Two tables preferably, yeah, because you're going to have some exercise, right? You don't want to be by yourself when we say do an exercise. At least you want to make sure you can have a pair, right? You can have a pair. Yes, you can have a pair. Yes. So who's happy to be here? If you are, say, yay! If you're happy, say EDI. All right. Okay. So